The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Greetings, Bitcoin pips.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one, Bitcoin's surgest and biggest weekly rally in 4 months. Bitcoin rose 5% Friday to 1-month highs, powered by what analysts said was a flurry of buying ahead of April's halving event as recent outflows from exchange-traded funds slowed. The price rose to a session peak of $47,705, the most since January, after the first United States listed spot Bitcoin exchange-traded products received regulatory approval. Dan Eve, the price of Bitcoin is up.
Yes, finally. We kept on being positive, didn't we? We were like up, 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 and then it kept on kind of sliding a bit. And then there was that post ETF blues where everything kind of crashed, and they're saying that it was the outflows from GBTC that had been locked in. But we're finally seeing a bit of turnaround, which is good, and almost the pre ETF hype level. You know, in the days before when there was the fake ETF hype, where the fake approval hype, where it hits like 48K. So maybe we are going to hit 50 like pretty soon. There's 65 days to the halvening. So that's pretty close. We're getting there very soon. There's the hash rate's still hovering around near all-time high, just under 600 exahashes, around 580. Difficulty is at 75 trillion. Such a huge number, isn't it? So many zeros. So yeah, that's cool. I love I love it when price goes up, and everyone's more happy when you speak to them as well. Especially if you work in like day in day out in Bitcoin. You know, when you speak to people, their mood. It's like in England when the weather's crap. You know, the skies are grey because English people are like getting on with their day. And it's the same with Bitcoin, right? You know, when the markets are red because you'll jump on a meeting and everyone's like, yeah, so let's just do the work and stuff. But price shouldn't have anything to do with it, but it does, let's face it.
The skies are definitely not gray anymore. Yes, as we've been saying for quite a long time, the price of Bitcoin will go up, and now it's gone up. As we saw with the ETFs, they had to exit out of the grayscale Bitcoin ETF to sell to get their money. That happened, but that selling was inflowed and destroyed by the buying. There was just much more buying that continued day after day, as the Bitcoin ETF is now the most successful ETF for its first few weeks, and the number 2 ETF behind gold in front of silver. So it's happened. It keeps happening. The price of Bitcoin is up. Dan Eve, now we have to predict against the predictor of all predictors, who I think refused to predict last week, which is always a good prediction strategy. Dan Eve, do you think we'll be higher or lower this time next week? Does the great rally continue? And everyone let us know in the chat down below.
Yeah, ever the optimist, higher. For sure.
I agree. I always think higher. I've generally thought that if you can buy Bitcoin, you should buy some Bitcoin. But now, will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Outlook not so good. Outlook not so good. We might be in for a surprise reversal according to the magic Bitcoin 8-ball. Moving on to issue 2. Computer expert told brazen lie that he is Bitcoin founder. High Court hears, according to a headline from The Standard. Dr. Craig Wright has claimed he is Satoshi Nakamoto, the pseudonym of the person widely credited with founding the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Yes, Dr. Craig Wright's trial is back in the news again today, and back on Twitter, where I've been following fantastic reviews from Norbert and other people who have been following this trial, typing in practically everything that's been happening and really informing us about what's been going on. As we said before, the Open Crypto Patent Alliance, something like that, COPA, a Crypto Open Patent Alliance, is suing Craig Wright and has gotten him where they want him in British court, where they are bringing up these alleged forgeries by Mr. Wright, who he's had to respond to day after day. I've been following it on Twitter, and it does seem like Wright is in trouble for the forgeries. As we said previously, he'd offered them a chance to get out, a chance to settle. Dan Eve, what do you think about the Craig Wright trial?
So what I want to know is at what point does this like aggregate of forgeries mean that he actually gets some form of like legal punishment himself, right? If you're submitting forged documents to the court, surely it doesn't just stop there, right? They don't just go, "Oh, we'll take that into account when we're deciding on what the verdict should be." But you're not going to be prosecuted for faking documents, because surely faking documents is pretty. It's like quite important, right? Do you know what the laws are like in the US? Are they
Well, we,
surely?
we had a similar case here that's still going on where a certain person said that his holdings were worth more than they were when he wanted to buy the Buffalo Bills, but then he said they were worth less when he has to pay taxes and other things like that.
Yeah.
So there are definitely laws against forgeries, especially forgeries in these cases where you inflate the value of something, either to prove that you have more money than you have, or if you deflate the value of something to pay less taxes on it, or if you do both, it's pretty bad. So with these kind of forgeries, it definitely seems to destroy Dr. Wright's reputation, destroys his claim on Bitcoin. And as we've seen, at least from the outside, we don't have any key evidence on this. It does seem like a very rich person, allegedly Calvin Ayre, has funded this Craig Wright. And he's funded in the kind of way, if you were a billionaire and you thought that you met Satoshi Nakamoto, that you would say, my goodness, this is the real Satoshi. And you would give him your extra bed, and you'd give him your extra car, and you'd give him your extra $1 million, and you'd put him in a foundation and these kind of things. If you really thought, and let's assume best intentions, that allegedly, Mr. Ayre or whoever has backed this Craig Wright person thought they were really backing the Satoshi. So what an amazing thing you have, your chance to back the Satoshi. But now we've seen, when it comes down to the evidence, it seems to be a series of forgeries. There seems to be an attempt to backdate documents. There's a claim that if you upload your documents to some kind of server, that it will change the dates on the documents, which is patently absurd, right? So there's a lot of absurd claims going on. At certain points, according to what I've read about the trial, allegedly and all that, Dr. Wright seems like a computer expert, but at certain points he seems out of his depth, either making things up or just assuming that you can fool people, by talking big. But either ways, it does seem like the trial is going bad for Craig Wright. We're also joined by Josh Shigala. Josh, you want to cue in? We talked about the price of Bitcoin going up, and now we're talking about the Craig Wright trial.
Yeah. My apologies for being late. It takes a while to make bulletproof coffees these days. Um, so, yeah, Craig. The thing is, what I find really fascinating is that if I read the Twitter reports from the core side or from the Copa side, it's all everybody's dancing on Craig Wright's grave. They're like, yeah, Craig Wright, he's finished. We're kicking that out of the Copa is absolutely smashing it out of the ballpark. And then when you go over to the Craig Wright party to read their reports, they're like, Craig is just smashing it out of the ballpark. He's just wiping the floor with them. And it seems like both parties are in these massive echo chambers. Now, for me, I'm just sign the keys. I'd be happy. Like, I honestly, I know that Craig goes on and on about keys doesn't mean you don't own it. Meh, meh, meh. It means you own it to me. Sorry, it means you own it. Yeah, some might say you stole it. Whatever. You just sign the keys, and then I for one am happy. I'll bow to the gods of Satoshi at that stage. But the thing is that the reason why because that is the fundamental reason why there is so much pushback against this guy, because he fumbles and he fiddles, and then there are all these forgeries, and he's obviously a smart guy. He's obviously got a background with a lot of forensic, all these sorts of things. I think they might be like stretching the truth, like a good fisherman. It was this big, but it got away, kind of thing. The amount of absurdities that comes out from the guy is absolutely huge. But look, if you claim to be Satoshi, that's created in a lot of passionate people. Bitcoiners are passionate people because they see this as the invention that could absolutely change the world, is changing the world, changing Wall Street, changing government, changing structure, changing society. Yet we have this guy that says, I'm Satoshi, just believe me because, I've got some early emails and I stomped on the original hard drive. Oh, no, it was a bonded courier. No, like the amount of constant, consistent flurry that comes out of this guy's mouth is absurd to me, but it is really funny seeing both sides of the party being so passionate that they're winning. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's the court of law. It's the best thing we have apart from signing freaking keys to determine if someone is the valid, owner of the name.
Well, and again, the court doesn't really prove that he's Satoshi. Signing the transaction proves that he's Satoshi. Having an early copy of the document would help, one that's not a forgery, that doesn't have an obvious forgery, which he admitted in court that he'd been making forgeries, that he'd been intentionally backdating these things. His excuse is that he destroyed the evidence that he was Satoshi. Then he changed his mind and decided to become Satoshi again. So it's a very strange situation. There's a comment in the chat I just want to address really quick. He can sign a message with Bitcoin with the keys without moving any of the coins. So this is not a coin movement issue if you want to keep the original coins intact. Or if he just said publicly, hey, I want to keep those coins intact, so I destroyed the key. But I do not think he said that publicly. I don't think that's a statement. And I don't think that he'd be getting, presumably, the backing of this millionaire, Mr. Air, if he didn't have the money. I mean, the reason you back Satoshi is because he has the money, because he has the power, because he wrote the thing. But this guy doesn't seem to have any of those things, and it keeps coming up in court.
But you do have the side. You have a couple of executives that have left, or one in particular, I've forgotten his name. He's all over Twitter, really laying into him now because he was hoodwinked, and it takes a lot of guts. It actually takes a lot to go past your own cognitive dissonance. If you've believed something, you've told all your friends, you've been professional and said, I'm working for SV and it takes a lot for you to change your mind because you've got a lot invested in that. And this guy has turned around and come out and said, no, Satoshi, I've heard all of the things. I've heard not just rumors, but I've been in the room with Craig and Calvin when they've discussed stuff which I've just gone, huh? Like, and so this person's coming out and saying, and I think it's probably a really, really intelligent business move of him to actively bag the thing, because already the comments under his Twitter are like, you were shilling it for so long. Yeah, but he's not anymore because he's stopping this affinity scam. Now, alleged affinity scam, I should say, until the court, puts it right. But I don't know. This is the fundamental thing. If I look, I could be convinced as well by some of it. Obviously, the forgeries and all this, and this is why people get sucked into this, is because he has been around for a long time. He has got some of the aspects that could be Satoshi. He is a madman. No, I wouldn't say mad, but definitely he's got one beer bottle short of a six-pack. That's for sure. Like he's a bit wacky and he's human. He's human, but just because someone's absolutely intelligent and has a lot of PhDs doesn't mean he's not a scammer. It doesn't mean in fact, it means that he can scam, because a dumb person couldn't get this far. A stupid person couldn't get this far in the scam. He would have to say, it's only a really intelligent person that could hoodwink people for so long and baffle them with technobabble. And then I've got to add to this. Now, I've just got a lot to say about this because I've got some very close people around me that, or one close person in particular, that is absolutely sold on SV, and he's been working on the protocol and everything else. And he says the technology is so good and sound, and we can have big blocks, big as terabytes. It's not a problem, and this, that, and the other side. And so, and that's why I just thought, man, we've had constant conversations together, and I just cannot get it through to him. And that's why I see it as so dangerous, because I think there are a lot of very good people working on this protocol. And funnily enough, because I don't even mind a protocol that wants to try terabyte blocks. I think it's fantastic. Try terabyte. How do we know that big blocks don't work? Yeah, gigameg blocks. Like, let's make them. Let's see if they work. Fantastic. Because that's the whole point. Like, let's let the market, we don't need gulags. We can just try these things. But yeah, the problem is the affinity scam saying this is the real Bitcoin and that's not. And that's the problem. That's the big problem behind this whole deal for me.
Well, just like the situation that we have in the United States, people have adopted this man as their leader. They have taken him in as if it's a cult or a small religion. And the thing that makes a religion different than an investment, right? If you invest in Toys R Us stock and I say, okay, Toys R Us is going out of business, that's a bad deal. You can change, right? That's just an investment. That's external of me. But when we talk about the leader and we talk about a cult, what we say is that's internal to you. So if I attack the leader, if I attack the cult, if I show you how they're ripping you off or you lost money, if I show them how, he has false documents, he has all these forgeries, he never seems to be able to prove it, I'm not attacking something external to you. I'm attacking you because you are part of the cult and you cannot separate yourself from the cult arbitrarily. It's going to take, the opposite of the brainwashing that got you into the cult, which is, like Josh said, many articles, a whole ecosystem of people pumping out stuff, getting paid to put out information that is slanted towards their side. And this keeps you in the cult. It keeps you happy. And even as we've seen the price destroyed, the reputation destroyed. I didn't bring up the article, but Bitcoin SV was just delisted from Coinbase. So even the affinity scam is starting to go away as people realize you have to protect people from these bizarre forks of Bitcoin that don't seem to have any technical merit and are trying to take the name and confuse people. It's a protection issue. It's not just, we're offering a lot of coins at Coinbase, it's a fun time. You have to protect people from these things.
Yeah, that's saying something as well. If they can list something like Shiba but delist BSV, that's really saying something about what BSV really is and the intent behind it. And as Josh said about the Bitcoin is built on the foundation of proof of work. And as Josh said, all he needs to do is sign a message. And as you pointed out, Tom, he doesn't even need to send coins. He just needs to sign a message from those addresses and prove that he's Satoshi. But he can't even do that. And that's what the stupid thing is, right? Why would you fight in court and spend all this time fighting in court when you could just sign the message and then you wouldn't need a court case? You'd win. In fact, the stupid thing about this whole thing is that if you signed the message, almost every court case you'd you'd win because you'd prove that you were Satoshi. So the whole thing
and everyone here would back you. Everyone would say, well, you're either Satoshi
give in and
or it was Kleinman and you murdered him and you took the keys. I mean, if you have the sword, you have the sword.
That's it.
And let's go back to the very beginning of this. Gavin Andreessen was taken into a special room with a special laptop and a special version of a wallet. And we don't know what happened, but it wasn't a clean demonstration. They did bamboozle him.
Magic trick.
But again, like John, the magic trick only happened once. Like if it was real, why don't you sign some more keys? Why go to all these court cases? Why have the court try to declare you Satoshi when we know Satoshi is the one with the keys? If you don't have the keys, you're not Satoshi. Like,
because God wouldn't want showing other people the golden tablets, right? Otherwise, they could steal the golden tablets, which have everything written on. So just one special person is nominated to have the golden tablets and explain them to people. But in that, the Citrix thing was hilarious, right? He literally said, did he say something like, he uploaded his documents to Citrix and they scrambled them and created forgeries.
It was amazing. He did seem to think there was like a major change with the Citrix file system, which is just absurd, right? Get a computer expert in there. They'll tell you how absurd it is the next day. So it's been bad, but I do think a lot of ways, like Dan was saying, we're getting into religion here. We saw the Book of Mormon. He looks down into the magic hat and he has the plates and he can't show them to anyone. And again, it's this lack of proof thing. And then they say, well, you're just supposed to take it on faith. And that's when this fake Satoshi thing becomes a religion. And that's kind of what we're up against, a very small religion. But I want to give a shout out to at Bit Norbert on Twitter. I'm never going to call it X. And he's been doing just great daily live streams of text. He's an incredible typist. He gives you all the details. I'm not even sure what's happened today. Here's a tip address for Norbert if you want to give him a couple bucks on the Lightning Network. And again, the Lightning Network, you can pay for coffee. Bitcoin has improved technically since the block size war, since the split. Exit question: what do you guys think is going to happen at the trial? Will they prove that Craig Wright is not Satoshi? Dan Eve.
Well, I mean, the problem is I don't think any court's gonna come forward and say genuinely, you know, that they're gonna put their rubber seal that they think Craig isn't Satoshi. They'll kind of say, well, the evidence alludes to the fact that he probably isn't. But I don't know. It seems like they're never going to get to this proper seal of approval, saying just throw all further court cases out because he's a liar. But what they should be saying, and this is the problem with the burden of proof in terms of the UK libel system, and it's the problem with that. What's his name? Ben Goldacre had when he was being done for libel against the one of the, I think it was Chiropractic Society. But the burden of the proof is actually on him rather than the person making the claims, which is the insane thing. If someone's making a claim in any other industry, like for example, I don't know, medicine, for example, the FDA would have to verify their claim that it can heal someone in some sort of way. And the burden of proof is on the person that's claiming something. Whereas, Craig Wright can just claim that he's Satoshi and he doesn't have to provide proof. And otherwise, and you have to prove that he's not, which is in some ways quite difficult to actually do, because it's a lot easier to prove that you are someone than it is to prove that you're not someone, to prove that someone else isn't someone.
It's also very difficult to prove that I'm not Satoshi, and it's difficult to prove that Josh is not Satoshi. Josh, what do you think is going to happen in the trial?
I don't know what's going to happen, but in terms of the outcome of this trial, but I do know absolutely that, but whoever wins this trial, there'll be another trial because both sides are going to say no. The biggest issue I see with this trial is that the judge is probably not technical enough to truly see through the techno bubble. And this is what's really key to the hoodwinking here, is that Craig is very good at techno bubble. And a lot of very, very intelligent developers will tell me that what Craig talks about is absolutely phenomenal in terms of the technology. Once you get it, first you think, bullshit. And then you're like, wow, he really gets it. It's Turing complete and isn't that. Like this will absolutely come out of, and I've spoken to multiple developers. So he does know what he's talking about, but he also doesn't know. And I feel personally he's hoodwinking everybody. And it's so phenomenal. It's just another phenomenal stone in the wall of Bitcoin. This story that we're on, this journey that we've all been on for a very long time. And this show has been the longest running Bitcoin show in the world, by the way, folks. So give us a thumbs up, because we've been here for 13 years now or something. I don't know. It's just a long time. 10 years, 12, I don't know, whatever. And every week there's an extraordinary event to talk about with this technology, and this one is absolutely phenomenal. Just sign the freaking keys, man. Just sign them if you are. If not, walk away.
Well, let's also talk about the weakness of Satoshi Nakamoto's position. Satoshi Nakamoto is anonymous, and Satoshi Nakamoto wants to stay anonymous. So it's easy to impersonate Satoshi Nakamoto because he, she, they, space alien, is not going to come out and accuse you of anything, because if they do, they're exposing themselves more. And as they said in Reservoir Dogs, that can't happen. And if we look at this trick that the Satoshi team or group or whoever it is has played, disappearing from the internet, yet creating a program that's created billions, maybe trillions, I don't know, dollars of value that is now traded on the stock market, that's now on the CNBC news every day on the ticker, Bitcoin, and as well as the 9 ETFs or whatever we have right now, disappeared, completely vanished. So it does make sense that there would be someone trying to impersonate that person. It does make sense that they would have more success than if they say tried to impersonate me, because I'm still just a person. I'll say, hey, that's not me. You know, I don't have these problems that Satoshi has, where Satoshi cannot come back and say, hey, that's not me. And if they did, it would expose them. So it is a good position, ripe for a con man, for one to come along. And I also enjoyed talking about small religions, or cults, as they call them, and the parallels between the US system and this system as well, where a similar kind of special narcissist has taken over and just might wreck everything. And
let me ask you though, I would like to know from the audience, if the court says yes, you are Satoshi Craig, would you accept that as a verdict? Would in the chat there, would you accept that? Is that a thing? And also for Thomas and the panelists, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think again, they're still fighting it out in the caves there. Nothing we say or do is going to give them every evidence. Even here, we have the guy saying that Gavin was given a fresh laptop. So we're still going with that the fooling people test worked. That's the level of insanity that we're at, where we can't even go back and say, hey, Craig tried to sign the keys, fooled Gavin Andreessen, but won't do it again, which is just a classic, back to Dan was saying, with guys looking into the magic hats to get the golden plates. And then they destroyed this text and they said, reproduce it. And he couldn't reproduce it. But the people believed him anyway, because he told a different story. And people just want to hear a cool story. They just want a story where this guy is Satoshi and he's Australian and he's larger than life. And if you meet him and you say, hey, I used to play pool, and he's like, I was a billiards champion at Oxford. And you're like, I used to swim too. I used to swim for the Olympics. I was on a second team. Do you fence? Of course I fence at an Olympic level. I was on the national team in 1973. I mean, the guy just makes up stuff. Like, this is absurd. Like, come back to reality, people. But I know you're not going to. Getting mad in the comments. So
he worked at Staples. So he does understand books.
He has access to the easy button.
Notepads.
I mean, he does sound like, I've met him and had a general conversation. He does sound like, he sounds like an intelligent guy to someone who isn't able to pick stuff apart. I'm not saying he is far away more intelligent than me. He's got 700 degrees, I hear. But he's a very articulate in the way, he's very arrogant, but also very articulate in the way he explains things, and it's very knowledgeable.
Well, and again, so is Cliff Clavin.
At the same time, right? He tries to bamboozle people, and it's obvious that he does it to anyone that kind of really knows,
Well, and we've all met these kind of people. You've met them at the bars. You've met them bragging out in the world. It's kind of like the mailman from Cheers, Cliff Clavin, where he just knows everything and he's wonderfully spoken, has a great voice. But what does he do in reality? He sits around and drinks the beers and delivers the mail. He doesn't really have a real life. And this guy, through some management of circumstances, got in with these money people who funded him like he was Satoshi. They set him up with companies. They set him up with programmers, with all these kind of trappings, as if he were the Satoshi. But if he really was the Satoshi, he'd sign the key, or he'd have a ton of early Bitcoin himself, and he wouldn't need to be involved with these weird people. You have to, if you're in the cult and you're believing this, you also have to believe that all these weird people are okay. And they've clearly done stuff online I don't want to go into they're a little weird. And you gotta be like, is that where I want to put my investment of faith? You know, these little weird people.
Well, Calvin did. And to go back to what you were saying when I first, jumped in late on this call, on the show, the fact that Calvin is still backing him isn't an excuse that he was hoodwinked. He's a VC who's meant to do his due diligence. He can do his due diligence by saying that we're going to give you a loan. Apparently, it's all a loan. He's not backing him. It's all a loan. Is extraordinary to the point that obviously Calvin's like, look, if he is Satoshi, I win. If he isn't, and he's fooling everybody, I win. So I'm just going to go along with it. But just like the other executive, I've got to find his name. I can't just keep saying that. But he is responsible for people piling money in, and but he comes from the gambling side, so he can write it off as a morally in his head as, well, these people are just gambling on the fact that he is Satoshi, and then you've got other people, legitimate people working on this that are just like, I don't care if Satoshi's in on this or not. I think this is the best way to go. This is the original Bitcoin. This is da 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 da. We've still got one on the front of the address, and this is what I bought back in the day. So, yeah, I don't think Calvin Ayre is excusable at this stage. I think he needs to. He would know absolutely that he is not Satoshi, or he is one or the other. But at this stage, I mean, working this closely with the guy for so many years, you cannot not know the truth after so long, surely.
Well,
But
and
Christian,
sadly, if it wasn't a
Hansen-
religion cult, if it wasn't a religious cult, people would be able to leave once he was disproven. But like you said there, Josh, those people, they have this massive guy who's claiming crazy things. You don't even need him. If you want to just say, I want big blocks, you don't need a fake Satoshi to do that, right? You can just be like, we got programmers. We're going to do our own thing. We're going to call it Big Block Coin. You know, it's going to be BBC. It's going to be everywhere, right?
Yeah.
They don't need this.
Exactly.
Why involve yourself with a forger and a possible fraud? And again, they can't see this, but it's the kind of things where maybe these things get stuck in their head, and later on they're like, yeah, why is our Satoshi out there forging things? Like, why did he backdate even a single document? Like that, especially if he's a computer person, why would you think that would fool anybody? Like, why would you think these trails of metadata throughout the systems wouldn't be there? It doesn't make any sense.
The level that goes to, where people will say, I saw one guy, an SV guy, say, the thing is that he's such a forensics expert that he couldn't have forged these because these are such bad forgeries. And Craig wrote the book on digital forensics. So, and even Craig said, if I was to forge something, it wouldn't be like this. Huh? But he submitted it. Like, what, how can you have so much cognitive dissonance? And it is very, very painful. For those that don't know what cognitive dissonance is when you've believed something for so long, it's actually painful to reject those thoughts outright, even when you have new evidence. It hurts. It hurts the brain. And then there's other people who are wired differently, who actually seek the other side of their story. It's a lot rarer, but yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, and
It's
again,
very
you can't. I think the current story coming from the court right now is that Craig has acknowledged that these documents were forged, that they were backdated, that they were edited, that he attempted to prove things with these documents that the documents themselves could not prove. Why would you want to support that guy? Like, someone's making forgeries, making lies because they allegedly destroyed all the original Bitcoin stuff. Well, look down your two options. You're like, okay, you're Satoshi. Your one option is to go public, say, I destroyed all my keys, but I'm Satoshi anyway. Your second option is to start forging documents to prove that you're Satoshi. Which one of these two choices is the honest path? I destroyed all my stuff, or I forged stuff to prove that I'm Satoshi, even though I destroyed all my stuff. It's not honest. So, but I think we talked about this a lot. Also, I want to say, as Josh was saying, it's a big deal that Calvin's bets are covered, that the VC's bets are covered. As we talked before about VCs, they make 10 bets. If one of them goes, they're fine. So he could lose all 9. And like Josh has said, and other people are now allegedly, this isn't all a loan to fake Satoshi. So it's the kind of thing where he's riding high. He's got this big company. He's doing lots of fencing. And then all of a sudden they come and they repo all the fancy cars. All the programmers quit. They take away your office. They take away your fencing swords. And you have to wrap this thing up. Exit question. How much longer will this Craig Wright nonsense go on? 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, or forever? Dan Eve.
It's going to be endless appeals, it seems, until Calvin Air runs out of money, and even then he'll probably still get bankrolled because the BSV shill army doesn't seem to go down or decrease. It seems to just stay there, nibbling at you like some annoying little mosquito or something. Never going, unfortunately. Too many appeals.
Josh Shigala, how much longer will this last?
Well, people have gone to prison for perjury for way less than this. Submitting forgeries is a grievous crime. It really is, because you're trying to fool a justice system. But yeah, an appeals process will happen. Another appeals process, maybe it goes to the High Court, I don't know, or maybe he just gets thrown in prison beforehand, or maybe he gets found to be Satoshi. But even if that happens, there'll be an appeal from the Copa side. I do think it's really good that Copa actually is pulling through on this, because Craig has basically pulled people like Hodlnaut and Cobra, and that was very strategic, because he knew that Cobra wanted to stay anonymous, so he would be a no-show, so he would win by default because Cobra wouldn't show. And now look, I've been proven in court that I was Satoshi. Yeah, but if you dig a bit deeper, you got proven because Cobra was a no-show, so you won by default. Like, the guy is using every trick in the book. So yeah, I don't know. I've even forgotten the question now. But
I think that the answer is it goes on forever, that this never ends, that as with all con men, you just keep conning. Deny, deny. You never stop lying. You never stop spinning. I don't think that the situation in the U.S. is going to go away either. I think he'll continue spinning no matter what happens, claiming victory, claiming your greatness, the narcissistic pride showing through. This monster is not leaving us anytime soon. Let's move on to the next issue. Check out the World Crypto Network at worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,498 videos that you could watch for 3 months, 18 days, and 7 hours straight with no breaks. It's been 10 years, 1 month, and 29 days since our first video. Issue 3. After Nayib Bukele's crushing unconstitutional victory, what's next? As the caption says, El Salvador's philosopher king is already hinting at a third term. You might ask why the Economist magazine, of all people, is calling his victory unconstitutional. It's because the El Salvador constitution says that the president can only serve 1 term, and Bukele has broken that, now serving 2 terms and hinting at a third, almost like an unelected dictator who forced the Supreme Court to change the rules at gunpoint in the congressional chamber, according to the Wikipedia. Josh Shigala, what do you think about Nayib Bukele's incredible victory in the election in El Salvador?
Yeah, I don't know too much about it, to be honest, so I can't really make a comment. If the people voted for him in such a great amount legitimately, then hey, that's what you get. And I mean, for him to have such a vision with Bitcoin and understand that he can get away from the IMF and all of this sort of stuff is fantastic, and it's great. And he didn't build, some sort of country coin and try to fork Bitcoin and this sort of thing. So I don't know. I don't know enough about it. If he is a dictator, he's kind of, in my mind, better than a bad dictator. I mean, it could be worse. Saying that, you don't want not the will of, like, I'm not the biggest fan of democracy as an idea anyway. That's not to say I think dictators aren't. I'm not a fan of monarchies. I'm not a fan of. I just think there might be a different way, but democracy is at least the starting point, at least for something sane. So yeah, that's what the minimum that you want is people, the masses, to vote and say, hey, we want this guy to lead us.
I think the beauty about this story is you don't know what's going to happen until the end. And they always end the same way. So right now we can say, like Josh said, he's a good dictator. He's a kind dictator. He only broke the term limits rule. He only, realigned the Supreme Court by gunpoint, according to Wikipedia. They always end badly. It's fun now to say that he's going to break the streak and that he's going to be the friendly Stalin or the nice Lenin or the wonderful Gaddafi or whichever one you want to go with. Give me any dictator example you've got in history. They all end badly. It's interesting that he's into Bitcoin. It's like being into a new promotional thing or being into CDs or something. But I don't think this is going to carry long term. It's the saddest prediction. I don't want it to happen, but we're going to find out how many Bitcoin can fit into a suitcase. And maybe his cousin took it, or they had a security lapse, or they got struck by lightning. But yeah, I don't think this bodes well. Dictatorship, breaking the rules, as we're seeing now in the U.S., never works when you have a written constitution. Like, you have to follow the constitution. Dan, Eve, what do you think?
Based on Bitcoin isn't good because someone will take the keys.
Oh yeah. Well, it'll be an accident, Josh. It's going to be a hacking accident. It certainly would not take the keys. That's absurd. Dan, Eve, what do you think about Nayib Bukele, his incredible victory? It's just like when Putin won his election again. Yeah.
There's definitely lots of questionable elections happening in all over the world, but whether I don't know, being a dictator, right, is obviously a bad thing. But he is, it's to the people that would have been murdered by the cartels. And I'm not saying that I agree with dictators, of course, but he seems to be doing a good job with like reducing murder. So surely that's that's kind of a good thing. You can argue that there's more direct life saved by doing that than, say, for example, from replacing plastic straws with paper straws, right? Something you could quantify a bit better. But yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, they're making a bold step with Bitcoin, and it's becoming a great case study of Bitcoin becoming a national currency. He's obviously done it in quite a questionable way, rolling in with the guns and kind of taking over like vigilante style. But at the same time, it does seem like he's kind of turned the country around. But is, as you say, like, good dictator, bad dictator, and at what point does it become bad? I mean, if you're someone who is sat there ravaged by crime, then you'd probably be welcoming a dictator, right? You'd be that would change your life, that made you have the ability to walk the streets without fear. But at the same time, from an external perspective looking in, it's easy to wag a finger. But I don't really know a huge amount about anything. So I mean, from the crime stats, it seems like he's doing a good job. Obviously, it didn't seem like he'd legitimately kind of got into power. But is a third term, was that like a fine thing before? Did he change the law so that he could have a third term? He did.
This is only the second term. He's also talked about a third term. They have a 1-term limit in the law.
Okay, so he's already he's already increased it. But didn't Zelensky's done the same thing though, right? He's holding off a thing, so he's basically he's essentially.
I mean, they got invaded. I mean, it's very difficult to have an election during an invasion.
Yeah, but it's still it's still doing the same thing, right? You can say it's difficult to not become a dictator when your country is ravaged by one of the worst homicide rates in the world. You could argue And
Well,
I'm not
but I mean, again,
defending
with
him.
the
I'm not
with
defending
the
him. I'm
rounding
just
up of the
playing
people.
devil's. I'm playing
Well,
devil's
I know,
advocate
Dan,
here.
but it's
But
just
there's
a simple
always there can
question
always be
of
an excuse
how
for
many
for
innocent people
people.
do you want to put in jail to have no crime in your society? And it seems from what they did, which again seems like a strong man,
Yeah.
seems like a very forceful thing,
Yeah.
is they rounded up everybody. And
Yeah.
we know that this decreases crime, but we don't necessarily have dossiers or details on every single one of these criminals. And criminals kind of, well, criminals do have rights. I mean, maybe not in El
No,
Salvador. And that's really what we're talking about here, is a temporary removal of rights because of, like you say, extreme gang violence.
Yeah.
And this is one solution, but it does seem like the heavy-handed solution. It does seem like the solution that might have external consequences, innocent people in jail. And you just have to say 10 innocent people in jail, 100 innocent people in jail, 1,000 innocent people in jail, 10,000 innocent people in jail, like, and no zero innocent people in jail, like have a trial system, maybe something like that, which is comfortable to you. And I agree. Bukele has put, I don't know how many, probably 10,000, probably 1,000 innocent type people in jail. So we have an extreme number of innocent people in jail. So if you think that's a harm, all of their family and so forth, deprived of them for no reason, they probably just had a tattoo or hung out with bad people. That's the difference. That's what
I'm pretty sure there's innocent people in the US in prison too, thousands of them.
But they didn't round them up randomly and not have trials with them. Like this, in this case, they said, okay, we're going to take down the cartel, and they rounded them up and haven't really had trials. So it's just what you're comfortable with, like the
Julian
level
Assange
of
hasn't
justice
really had a
system.
trial.
1 to 1,000. Again, I mean, one person to 1,000. But
wow, that's just one I can think of. But I'm sure there's. Yeah.
Well, okay.
I'm just saying. I agree. I agree. You should definitely have a system in place to like judge. And
I mean, it's just about what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with like 1 million innocent people in prison, and you don't think to yourself, I might be one of those innocent people. I went to a bar. There were people with tattoos there. They could have rounded me up, and that's, and I guess what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with that, I don't know, but we'll talk about it more.
Well,
It keeps coming up.
the people of that country have to be, that's the thing. The people, if it gets too bad, they need to rise up against him and fight him, just like in any other country where the dictator's just gotten out of control. And then eventually the
Just
people
seems,
have
yeah,
enough.
we get a new Napoleon to get rid of the old Napoleon, to get a new Napoleon to get rid of the old Napoleon.
That's true. That's
at
true.
a certain point, it seems maybe voting people in might be better. But let's keep moving. Issue 4: scrapped FTX relaunch raises alarm over legal team's profits. Former SEC official John Reed Stark described the FTX reorganization plan as a highway robbery of highway robbers. Dan, Eve, what do you think about this? We've talked about it before. The legal fees from FTX are so extreme that it's likely leading to them not restarting the business, which is a disaster for all their shareholders, investors, and so forth.
It is. It's insane. There wasn't the quote something like 4.5 billion in liability, or 4.3 billion liabilities, and then 4.5 billion that's going to the legal teams. And how can you justifiably say, well, even if you had to rebuild the business from the ground up to assess it properly, then it doesn't take 4.5 billion to rebuild that business. It just seems like it's another case where the law / regulation is meant to be there to protect people and to make sure that criminals are, the impact of criminals is reduced, etc. And what's happening is that they're just scooping up fines. They're scooping up money from companies that could otherwise go to the actual people that are genuinely impacted by it, or to go towards, as Josh pointed out before, the education process of avoid these scams in the first place. But it doesn't. It just lines the pockets of the senior people who are involved, and it's just another case of the people at the top making all the good money, and the people at the bottom who have actually been impacted just getting trodden on. So, I don't know whether FTX relaunch really had a chance of going for it, but the token even actually made a comeback briefly, but that was only on the chances that it could have potentially been been recreated again. But Frage would say what they should have been doing is proving a point that saying that rebuilding the business, but legitimately and down to the regulatory T, to show that you can operate as a business properly and that it can be done correctly and you can still make money from it. But instead, they pilfered it. Just like they pilfer everything else that they can, they pilfer and pillage and fine as much as possible. They reduce the compensation that people could have got, reduce it down as much as possible. And then the people that end up suffering are the people that are meant to be protected. So it's just another BS, exercise to extrapolate money from a dying company that could have otherwise, actually returned something to the people that it screwed in the first place.
I think they almost had no choice but to pilfer it. I'm not sure that they were ever focused on this rehabilitating the company or turning it around, especially when they found the books in the shape that they were in. There was hardly a company there before, so there's not really a company to rebuild. Although I am drawn to that major point in the past where Sam Bankman-Fried realized that it was a mistake for him to give up his company. There's a possibility there if he doesn't sign the company over to the bankruptcy people, if he just if he keeps stalling and he keeps appealing and he keeps getting a further trial date down the road, maybe sometime after the election, he could have still been in charge of this company and he could have ridden through this thing. And it's quite possible, as crazy as many of their investments seem, their style of approving things and disappearing messages and so forth, that they could have survived this thing if they hadn't gone into the legal bankruptcy process. It does seem a very interesting key moment there where Sam was unable to regain control of the company. And I don't know if it would be good. I mean, at this point, it's hard to say, like, was he really a scammer? Like, the thing went up, the thing went down, the thing went up again. Everyone is fine if you make money. It's a very complicated and interesting issue based upon the timing of when you break down the company, when you break it open. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the FTX legal situation?
Look, the lawyers, they're just so opportunistic and have taken advantage of this, like I knew they would. And we've declared this on this show many a time to say, hey, these lawyers are just going to pilfer. I mean, look at some of these numbers. FTX spent $53,000 an hour on legal and advisory fees. This is just insane. It's just obviously a scam, pilfering a scam. It's like the legal team billed $118 million from August 1st to October 31st, averaging $1.3 million a day.
Well, and not to defend the legal team, but I do want to say the condition of the books were horrible. It had to have been one of the most confusing.
$1.3 million,
$103
million a day.
I know what it's like, man. They used to charge hundreds of dollars for my time as well, and 2 or 3 times as much for the lawyers. So yeah, the legal fees are expensive. My advice to you is not to get in a lawsuit. That's the best possible thing. Tell the truth.
A day. You can't. It's just impossible for it to cost that much. What's happening is the lawyers are saying there is so much value here that it would be a sin not to charge more than our usual. I mean, look at the books. It's crazy. Instead of charging $1,000 an hour, we'll charge $100,000 and $53,000 an hour.
I don't know. Digital discovery is incredibly complicated. There's probably millions of pages of PDFs in this case. It depends how they review that and so forth, if it's a economical use of lawyers' time or not. But
hang on a minute. You could still charge your normal fee. It's an hourly fee. So if it takes you a year to get through all that stuff, it is what it is. I get paid, but instead,
yeah. But if you need more, if you need more readers to come in a short amount of time, or you need to make it go faster, like there are cost concerns. I
mean, they're not known, like liquidators aren't known for speed. That's for sure. I'm still waiting 12 years later. What is it? 2013. 11 years later for Mt. Gox. So
Well, that's more complicated because that's Japanese liquidators as well. Go ahead, Dan.
yeah.
So even if there were even if there were 130 like of the most senior lawyers a day, that means they're only charging 10,000 a day that they would have to charge. I have 130 of these best lawyers in the country. That's a lot. That's 130. I mean, how many pages are there? 130 is like an entire. It's a lot of people. I just the idea that 1.3 million a day, it just seems it's incomprehensible that there would be that much work, or I don't know. It just goes to show that where the money could have been going back to actually helping people and that have been affected.
Creditors.
Creditors, yeah, it's not, which is just insane. It's almost a silly money thing. We have these what's the word? You have as you brought up earlier, like the idea of fair pricing, right? That it's illegal to inflate something, a price for a certain for like a property price or to deflate it. Now, surely there should be some form of reasonable and price gauging, right? Isn't price gauging illegal and stuff like that? Surely this should be illegal to be unreasonable in your pricing in order to essentially pilfer a company and prevent people from being compensated. Like it just seems madness that it's that level, right? It's an unjustifiable level of money to go into a legal process.
It's demented. You can't say we need a legal process because everyone's had their money stolen from them, and then the legal process steals all the money from them. It's just what? It's dumb. It's sick.
Well,
It is kind of funny though. But remember, they have to pay for my Caesar salad and my gasoline, and I like a little gold leaf on the Caesar salad at lunchtime. Like to drink out of gold.
I like gold
chalices
bullion.
and
I like
gold bullion.
Not forget leaf.
Isn't it how that kind of how
chewier?
Isn't that kind of how some unions work though? They charge people loads of money in order to be able to represent them, and then they don't even get the pre-representation anyway. It's the same old stuff. It's basically people being duped into giving their money in order to be able to be helped when they're not actually helped by the people that are meant to be helping them. And that this legal process seems like the same thing.
All right, let's move on to the exit question. Did Sam Bankman-Fried make a mistake when he turned his company over? Josh Segala.
I don't think he had a choice. He would have been forced to hand the company over to a liquidator. I mean, it's like when the FDIC can run into a bank and just say, right, you're leaving, you're out. You've got 10 minutes to clear up your desk, and we're escorting you out. This is what happened. You don't have a choice when the government comes in to take you over. So,
Dan, Eve, did Sam make the right choice, or did he have no choice?
Yeah, I think he didn't really have a choice. Like his hand was kind of forced. And if anything, I don't think anyone that was involved would have wanted him to be at the helm of the company. He'd proven himself to be a complete idiot and all the things that about his effective altruism. He's very clearly the opposite of all those things. He's not someone who cares about the people and cares about being nice and being a good boy. He's someone who literally is a complete fraudster and would rather scam everyone. So yeah, it would be crazy if he did keep hold, and I think that a lot of people of the company and a lot of people would have wanted him out and been instrumental in ensuring that he was out of there, because otherwise he'd screw up any chance that FTX did have of actually being recovered and becoming a legitimate company. Like you can't recover from what he did, essentially.
I think Dan's right on this. I think if SBF had stayed in charge, people would not be getting their refunds now, even if it is a refund at $16,000 Bitcoin price or whatever level they mark it at. It is a refund. They did manage to pay people back. It would have been fun to see him try to hang on, and I would have enjoyed his arguments, especially if he kept speaking in public as he did before. It's a very interesting argument to just say, yes, my investments are bad now, but in 2 years, my investments will be back up and I'll pay everybody off, which does seem to be what has happened and what has occurred. It's a kind of like a Bitfinex situation, but you get your payback much later down the line. rather than getting that 50% value token up front. But we're headed towards the end of the show. Josh Segal, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Yeah. The story of the week is really no, I don't have one. I just trying to think of. So no, don't have one. Sorry. Over to you, Dan.
I don't have so I actually did something interesting this week, which was I went to ICE, which is a big gaming conference in the UK. It's massive. It's crazy. And last year, so I didn't see Ben there. I was hoping to see Ben, but he could make it down. But last year we were laughing about the fact that the gaming industry still didn't get the memo about like booth babes, and this year is exactly the same thing. All stilettos, cocktail dresses, mini skirts, and all sorts. They're definitely a very male-dominated industry, just like crypto kind of is still. In fact, probably crypto is probably less male-dominated than iGaming. But yeah, it was an awesome conference, and just it's just I love all the noises, man. You walk through Vegas and you hear all these like they're the most beautiful sounds and colorful, vibrant things, and ding 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 ding, and bells and whistles and lights going off, and yeah, it's just really interesting to kind of just walk through.
Is it gaming as in gambling or gaming as in computer games?
Gaming as in the bad gaming.
Right.
Gaming as in gaming, the naughty gaming.
Yeah.
But it's just really, really, really cool. And then some of the stuff there, like the way that a slot machine, it used to be a boring slot machine with just like a screen and a button where you could press, which was just or a thing. Now they've got these like amazing wraparound type screens where like the win thing will fill up a whole progress bar all the way to the top and above you, and it's amazing how that industry is evolving, and it's a free conference, so it's just interesting to go and have a look and just walk around and be amazed by all the kind of adult lights, flashing lights and sounds, eye candy.
Ah, yes, the incredible psychological process of separating people from their money. Yes, it's beautiful.
Oh, the
I see it.
government's so good at it as well. Yeah.
I see it a lot here in Vegas, though, Dan. I've seen all those machines you're describing, the wraparound machines. They even have NFL football machines now, if you can believe that. They were so mad about gambling just 5 years ago, and now the Supreme Court has changed the rules in the United States and allowed sports gambling, basically, and they have adopted it like you wouldn't believe. But my story of the week, I was just gonna keep talking about movies. I watched this movie called Spitfire. It's a documentary about the Spitfire, the airplane that pretty much won World War II for the British. It's kind of a loving and beautiful documentary. They interview about 4 or 5 of the remaining Spitfire pilots who fought in the war. They're obviously getting up there, and they had this fantastic HD footage that they'd shot of the modern Spitfires flying around. It was also interesting to hear about the different upgrades that they did, making at least 12 different versions of the plane. And at one point, when the German fighter was faster than the Spitfire, they said that Rolls-Royce showed up, took the engines out, put some new engine in, and they didn't have any problems after that. They had a 100-mile range on them and 100-mile above them in the sky. Just an incredible story. And especially think about when they didn't have enough pilots and they'd land them, they'd bring them back up. And a nice little counter story about the women pilots flying the airplanes from the factory to the field. So check out Spitfire if you want to see a cool movie about an airplane from World War II. Probably not interesting.
But did you watch Pez?
I've seen the Pez Outlaw, and it has a fascinating story about collecting Pez dispensers, and especially the international nature of it, where the Pez company in the United States wouldn't bring these designs in. So these guys started going directly to the factories and buying the designs, and then they'd sell them and they'd become rare Pez. And then the company sabotaged him by printing a bunch of the designs and bringing them into the collection, and just the back and forth of these collectible yet manufactured things. It was really cool. And it was interesting, like Josh, I think, to think about the way that markets work, and like a controlled market, like back in those days, like the United States, you couldn't get these Pez. But if he goes overseas and he brings them in, he can black market seed them to the whole market. And just interesting how collectible values go up and down. Depending on
what I don't understand about that story is that when he first started come in, with these massive duffel bags full of Pez dispensers, the border guards would look through the book and say, because normally the company would register a trademark with the border security. So if the border security found an illegal importer, they would do the part of the being policing that. But apparently they had the trademark, but they forgot to tell the border security. And so the border security said, well, if the company's that stupid, then go on, do it. And but then there was these years of battles. Why didn't they just tell the border security? And then it wouldn't have. Then it would have stopped. I don't understand.
Sometimes if you're a bad company and you have bad leadership, you don't even know. They don't even know the easy move they could have done to end that thing. But yeah. Yeah, definitely check out the Pez Outlaw, check out Spitfire. And we also talked about This Is Financial Advice, or not, This Is Not Financial Advice last week, about the Dogecoin millionaire, who I think is back up, actually. I think he's back over $1 million.
Yeah. Well, even if you're holding BSV, you're even up right now. So this is the crazy market that we live in. Yeah, it's wacky. It's wacky.
Well, I think we're heading towards the end here. So thanks to we should do a Super Bowl prediction, especially you guys, because you guys know all about the Super Bowl. So pick a winner for me, guys. Is it going to be the San Francisco 49ers or the Kansas City Chiefs? Dan, you go first.
I'm going to go with, because of my extensive knowledge of the NFL. I'm going to go for the 49ers because it's only 20 away from 69, which is obviously a very loving number.
Josh Agala, who do you got, Chiefs or Niners?
Well, I'm like an octopus betting on this. I have no idea. I'm just slithering around the bottom of the pool here. I'm going to go with Kansas. I'm going to go with Kansas because it's the Wizard of Oz, and yeah, and San Francisco's just lost it anyway in real life as a place.
Oh, we all know San Francisco is a friend of Dorothy, though. But that's a good pick, Josh. Kansas, and Dan has San Francisco. I'm, of course, with the 49ers. I'm from the Bay Area. I watched all their Super Bowls in the past, and we lost the last couple, but I hope we can turn it around this weekend. But Kansas City is a good team. I can't deny that, and it's a great story if Taylor Swift wins the Super Bowl. So that's also a fun story. Says Josh.
Yeah, will we see a Bitcoin company advertising through the Super Bowl? That's what I want.
Oh, absolutely, man. I think we're going to see those ETFs. I think that the Bitcoin ETFs are going to be in there. I don't think that Coinbase, we all remember last year Coinbase had the rotating QR code advertisement.
Was that only 1 year ago?
Might have been a couple, I don't know. But oh yeah, because we had the Matt Damon ad and all that. But we had the crypto Super Bowl a few years ago. Josh and I did a show where we talked about the commercials. I saw it come up the other day on the recommended things. And yeah, it was really a cool time. We had so many crypto commercials. Don't think
including FTX.
We had FTX. I think crypto.com is a possibility. They seem to be keeping their advertising up. I don't think Coinbase is going to have it. I think we're going to see Bitcoin ETF commercials. What do you guys think on the commercials predictions? Yeah.
Well, after FTX, I'm not sure if the Super Bowl would allow it, because they might be like, oh, you scammed a lot of our viewers. Maybe we don't want to be associated with crypto. I mean, this can happen.
Yeah, I think so. That's a very good point, right? They don't want their people getting stung. It's almost a seal of approval agreeing to an advert that's going out to the people watching. Yeah. So I think they would stay clear of it. Maybe go for the BlackRock or the Vanguard or one of the other kind of big, traditional Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah, I mean it's on the stock market now, guys. It's not that bad. It's just as bad a deal as any other stock. It goes up and down. We have no idea. But thanks to everybody for joining us. Be sure to give us a thumbs up down below. And until next time, bye.
Bye.